Turning now to the latest developments surrounding the January 6th Capitol attack. Opening arguments are set today for the second sedition trial against members of the far-right extremist group, the Oath Keepers.
So joining us, of course, now to break it all down, NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos is joining us now to discuss this. Thank you so much for being here, Danny.
Of course.
I guess the first question is just walk us through what we can expect through this trial, and also walk us through the prosecution's case. How is this going to be different from what we saw in the previous trial?
It's a lot like the previous trial in that these are a number of defendants who are alleged to have been involved in January 6th. The indictment contains plenty of their messages back and forth to each other, which is why in this modern era, the price of using all this technology is that you amass the government's evidence for the government. This is the kind of thing, had they picked up the telephone, most of this evidence wouldn't be in print right there in the indictment. Now, I have to say this, that when it comes to federal prosecutions, they are ultimately a mixed bag. It's hard to say there are winners and there are losers, except for the vast majority of the time the defendant loses in some sense. And here's what I mean. If you look at the last Oath Keepers trial we just had, you might say, oh, that was a resounding victory for the government. After all, some of the defendants are probably going away forever and ever and ever. But when you look at the seditious conspiracy charges, the government only convicted 2 out of the 5 charged with seditious conspiracy. So what does that tell us about seditious conspiracy as a charge? And really, in the end, does anyone care? Does the government care? Because they know that they can get convictions on other things, like in obstructing an official proceeding, which carries a very serious penalty as well. So again, in federal court, these prosecutions, a mixed bag. It's hard to predict what we'll see this time around.
And this seditious conspiracy charge, it is a rare charge. It goes back to the Civil War era. They did get a conviction for 2. You mentioned the acquittal for the 3. What are the challenges in prosecuting a seditious conspiracy case?
It's interesting. Seditious conspiracy actually is a conspiracy that requires more than your traditional conspiracy. You need a particular number of witnesses. But look, conspiracy charges in general are easier to prove for the government. Conspiracy charges really just require evidence of an agreement. And it doesn't need to be a written out, I agree to storm the Capitol, signed me. The government knows that. Juries know that. Courts know that. You just need this circumstantial evidence that there is an agreement among these people. And just like the last Oath Keepers trial, you can look at some of this text message evidence or this other messaging evidence and say, ooh, this looks really, really bad. Or will a juror see this as, hey, these are just some idiots getting together to rally in D.C.? Yeah, they have some pretty harsh rhetoric, but does it rise to the level of a conspiracy to obstruct a proceeding or seditious conspiracy?
And, Danny, we're going to move from that to yet another sedition trial starting later this month against the former Proud Boys national chairman. What can you tell us about that, and what should we expect there?
Again, more of the same. The government needs to prove, of course, beyond a reasonable doubt, with the presumption of innocence, that the elements of the sedition have been met. It's not that easy, and if there's any evidence of that, number one, the government rarely brings these charges, because you need to show that somebody is looking to overthrow by force or otherwise obstruct, and I forget the language of the statute, but it is a difficult burden to meet for the government. That's why they don't charge it very often. And lo and behold, in the last trial, I wouldn't say that the government won the majority of their seditious conspiracy charges. They lost most of them. Now, again, who cares if you're on the government side? These people are going away for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny Cevallos, lucky as always to have you breaking this down for us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.